You know that one kid in class. Sit somewhere in the middle, not the front, not the back. Teacher asks a question. Long silence fills the room. And this kid, you can almost see it on their face. They know. They absolutely know the answer. Their eyes flicker down to the desk. They shift slightly in their seat. And their hand stays exactly where it is, flat on the table, completely still. The teacher waits. The silence gets heavier, and eventually someone else speaks, or the teacher just answers it themselves, and the moment passes. And that kid exhales, quietly, like they just narrowly avoided something dangerous. Maybe that kid was you. Maybe it still is you. And if you've ever sat in that seat, you've probably told yourself some version of the same story. That you're shy, that you don't like attention, that it's just not your personality. And maybe you've watched someone else throw their hand up confidently, wrong answer and all, completely unbothered, and felt something that was equal parts envy and genuine confusion about yourself. Like, what is it that they have that you don't? Here's what's interesting. The answer is not confidence. It's not even personality. And once you understand what's actually happening inside that classroom, you'll never look at a silent room the same way again. In the 1970s, a social psychologist named Bibb Latané, along with his colleague John Darley, started studying something that seemed completely unrelated to classrooms. They were trying to understand why people in groups often fail to act, even in emergencies, even when acting is obviously the right thing to do. What they found was a phenomenon they called pluralistic ignorance, and it is one of the most quietly devastating forces in any social setting. Here's what it means. In a group, when no one can read what anyone else is actually thinking, every individual looks at the stillness around them and concludes that everyone else must be calm, confident, or certain. So they stay still too, and the whole group ends up performing a version of reality that nobody actually believes privately. Everyone is confused. Everyone is unsure. And everyone is sitting there thinking they're the only one who doesn't get it because everyone else looks completely fine. Think about what that means inside a classroom. A teacher finishes explaining something and asks if anyone has questions. Nobody raises their hand. Not because everyone understood, but because everyone looked around, saw no hands, and assumed they were the only one who was lost. So they stayed quiet to avoid looking stupid, and the teacher reads the silence as comprehension and moves on. And every single student in that room walks out slightly more behind than they were when they walked in. This is not shyness. This is a social trap that the entire room falls into together, silently, without anyone coordinating it. But here's where it gets more complicated and more personal. Because pluralistic ignorance explains the group behavior, but it doesn't fully explain what happens inside the individual student who knows the answers and still doesn't raise their hand. That's a different layer. That's where a psychologist named Mark Leary comes in with a concept he called self presentation theory. The idea is simple, but it runs very deep. Human beings are constantly, often unconsciously, managing the impression they make on the people around them. And in social settings, particularly ones with hierarchy, like a classroom with a teacher at the front and peers on all sides, the cost of a wrong impression feels enormous. It's not just about getting the answer wrong. It's about what getting it wrong means. It means you're the person who thought they knew and didn't. It means you drew attention to yourself and it backfired. And for some students, that risk calculus happens so fast and so automatically that they don't even experience it as a decision. The hand just doesn't go up. The body makes the choice before the brain can argue. Now, here's the part I want you to sit with for a moment, because most conversations about this stop at shyness or anxiety and leave it there like it's a fixed trait people are born with. But trace it back a little further, and you start to see something more specific. Think about the first time a child answers something in a group and gets it wrong, and the room laughs, or the teacher corrects them in a way that feels public, or a classmate says something small and sharp under their breath. That moment does something, not just emotionally, but neurologically. The brain files it under threat, and the next time a similar situation arises, that same brain runs a very fast background calculation. Last time I spoke up in a group, something bad happened. What's the safest move here? And the safest move, almost every single time, is silence. You can't be wrong if you don't answer. You can't be embarrassed if you stay invisible. And so the pattern locks in, not because the student is fragile, but because they are doing exactly what a well functioning brain does. It learns from pain and it tries to prevent it from happening again. Okay, I want to pause here and say something honestly, because I think it would be doing you a disservice not to mention it. Some students who never raise their hand are not anxious at all. Some of them made a completely rational read of their social environment and decided that speaking up was simply not worth it. Maybe they go to a school or grew up in a classroom where being visibly smart was socially risky, where knowing the answer made you a target, where the culture of the room punished enthusiasm. These students learned something real. They learned that silence is armor, and what looks like low confidence from the outside is actually a very precise social adaptation. The problem is that armor worn long enough starts to feel like skin, and they carry it into college, into workplaces, into rooms where the social rules have completely changed, and the armor is still on, still doing its job, protecting them from a threat that no longer exists. Then there's the other student, the one who raises their hand, wrong answer, and all, who speaks before they've fully thought it through, who volunteers first and figures it out as they go. And here's what most people miss about that student: they are not more certain, they are not smarter. They have simply built a different relationship with the possibility of being wrong in public. Somewhere along the way, they got evidence, small, repeated, accumulated evidence, that being wrong didn't destroy them, that the room moved on, that people forgot, that the teacher still called on them next time, and their nervous system stopped classifying public participation as a threat. It became neutral, sometimes even interesting. If you are someone who recognizes yourself in the student who goes quiet, I want to say something directly. The silence you reach for isn't weakness. It's a history. It's every room that ever made you feel like your voice was a liability. And that history made complete sense at the time. But here is what's also true: the brain that learns silence can learn something else. Not through forcing yourself to speak before you're ready, not through motivational self talk, but through tiny, low stakes moments of choosing differently. Answering in a small group before a large one. Writing the answer in the chat before saying it out loud. Letting yourself be wrong once in a safe room and noticing that you survived it. These are not dramatic transformations. They are small recalibrations. Each one tells your nervous system a slightly different story about what is possible. And the accumulation of those small moments is how the pattern actually shifts. Not overnight, not through willpower, but steadily, quietly, the same way the silence was learned in the first place, one room at a time.